The NFC East is one of the most history divisions in the National Football League. There are the Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants. Plenty of history for all four of those teams. And we are excited to jump into this division and give our 2024 preview for what we think is going to happen for each team heading into this season. We're going to give the bull case and the bear case for each team, walk through some win totals and odds to win the division, and kind of goes through some offseason losses and additions, and then what the model has to say about their season in regards to win totals and their odds to win the division there. So before we get into that, the show is brought to you by Not Beer. It is never a bad time to have a Not Beer sparkling water. It is the perfect summer drink to kick off your weekend. So make sure you find a link to the store locator in the comments, as well as the link to Amazon. You can just buy it on Amazon as well, have it delivered right to your front door. So make sure you grab yourself a Not Beer. All right, Brendan, how we doing, man?
Good, dude. It's a really exciting division, a lot of changes. And I remember when this division was like the worst division in football, and like a losing record would go to the playoffs from this division. So it's pretty exciting how it's turned around, and you need to start having a not beer on your desk for the ads.
Yeah, I know.
You do.
I will. I got a couple in the fridge. I should have just gone and got one before this. So yeah, no, the NFC East, growing up, we saw some dark times for this division growing up, and so it kind of gave us a certain stigma about what this division was. But in reality, it's especially solely between the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Commanders, formerly known as the Redskins, and the Giants. I mean, that alone just has so much, foundational moments of the National Football League. There's so much history in there between the coaches and the players and the stories that come out of each one of those franchises that are just like, painted across the league. And so it's always fun talking about these teams. There's so much support and love for these teams across the nation. There's so much hate for each one of these teams as well. So that's why it's also fun to talk about as well. But yeah, I'm expecting big things from a few of these teams. Some of these teams are going to look quite the same heading into 2024, and some of them are going to look quite different. So getting into it, we're going to start off with the Eagles. The Eagles finished second in the division last year at 11-6. Cowboys actually finished first. But nonetheless, this team is returning a lot of the same talent. Really, their only offseason losses that were relatively impactful were DeAndre Swift at running back, Olamide Zaccheaus at wide receiver, Boston Scott, the dude that just munches on the Giants, and then Hassan Reddick at linebacker, and of course Kevin Byard at defensive back. But they had quite an interesting draft. They got Will Shipley, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and then they had a few offseason additions, namely Saquon Barkley, that are coming in and will have an immediate impact as well. On the defensive side of the ball, we have Devin White, Bryce Huff, Zach Bond, and Oren Burks. So, the players, mostly the same. They had some good additions, a few key losses, but the big storylines heading into this season is one, the additions of offensive coordinator Kellen Moore and defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. That's going to be one of the most impactful storylines for this team heading into this season. We saw them kind of, they did finish 11-6, and so it's kind of hard to say that they had an unsuccessful season, but in reality, I think we all had much higher expectations for them last year. And I think heading into this year, the expectations are even higher somehow, even coming off of a down year, quote unquote, just because of all of the stock that they're putting into this team at both the coaching positions and then, of course, in their players. They have some, this lineup is star-studded in every which way. So expectations are high. They, of course, are the leaders to win the division. They have the best odds at -110. That's what I see on DK. Win total sitting at 10.5. Before I get into any of the numbers and any more details about the Eagles, Beach, quick synopsis about the Eagles and kind of what your gut feeling is heading into 2024.
Yeah, it was a down year last year, I'd say. I mean, still 11-6, make the playoffs, but I also want to point out I did DM Jalen Hurts when he made it to the league, so the only reason he's as good as he is today is because of me, and I told him that I trust him and I have so much faith in him.
Yep.
And so I just want to point that out.
I
But
can attest to that.
he can attest to that. I've got the DM. He didn't answer. But yeah, they had a pretty good draft, I thought, addressing the cornerback position. And, they are the pro Georgia Bulldogs when they have their defensive line and everything. So great team. I guess first thing I want to ask you is, the talk of the summer was Saquon Barkley addition to this team. Great running back that been on a terrible run team, and now he's on a really good one. And so I'm just curious how you think that's going to impact them as a whole, as well as just their rushing game in general. You think there's going to be any different splits as far as, I know they have Kellen Moore. So do you think there's going to be any difference with Barkley?
I do. I do think there'll be a bit of a difference. I think, it's funny because I think that we saw kind of this resurgence of the Eagles' run game with DeAndre Swift last year. And then you insert somebody who I think, for the most part, everybody across the board would agree with me that is a more explosive running back and more dynamic running back in Saquon Barkley. Now he does have his fallacies in a few different departments, but I think Saquon Barkley is going to come out and just shred some defenses in the run game, namely because of the scheme that they run and, of course, all of the other talent that surrounds them. So teams aren't going to be able to stack the box against Saquon like they once did against the Giants. So I think, it's kind of a cheat code having that much talent. You have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the perimeter, Saquon Barkley, and then, of course, Jalen Hurts and leading the helm at the quarterback position. A sleeper pick in the draft was Will Shipley out of Clemson. I think by the end of the season, we could be looking at a 1A, 1B type of situation in the backfield because
that's a take.
It's a take, but bear with me here. Saquon Barkley, may not be built anymore. Maybe this year he can get away with it, but he's not going to be a guy who you want to manufacture 25 to 30 touches a game to. He may not be able to take that anymore. And I think Will Shipley does maybe a few things that Saquon, I don't want to say can't do, but may opt out of doing, like grind out yards after yards, especially up by 14, 21 points.
Well, they typically have a rotation previously in the previous offensive coordinator. So I think they'll do the same, as well as there was some talk earlier about like trying to preserve Hurts because of how much he runs. And I think that they go more of like a player injury management type deal because they've got weapons everywhere, so they can. Yeah. And that's kind of what I feel like they're going to do. I don't think Barkley's going to play every down. They haven't had a running back that's done that in a while. So I think that who else do they have back there with the
Kenneth Gainwell?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could see all three of them playing a decent bit. Obviously, Barkley would carry most of the load, but they'll give him some breaks here and there.
Yeah. So I expect big things out of that backfield. Now, one thing I do want to bring up is there was some speculation that they would kind of go away from the tush push due to the retirement of Jason Kelce. That's obviously a big hurt for this offense, just from a leadership perspective, but a talent perspective on the offensive line. He was one of the greatest centers to ever play the game. So that's pretty big loss on the front, but
I don't see a drop off. I don't either. I think that they're going to continue to do the tush push. From what I see from beat writers and Eagle insiders, they're going to continue with it. It may not be as effective as it once was, but you got to think they had a 90% success rate on the tush push or a 90% conversion rate. Higher. Got to be higher than that.
Even if they drop off 5-10%, you got to still do it.
Yeah.
So
Jason Kelce had a hand in drafting his replacement, I believe, and he played guard last year. His name's escaping me, but I did hear on another podcast that, Jason was getting close to retirement and he helped pick who he wanted to replace him there. And so, plus Jalen Hurts squatting 800 pounds. I mean, we don't really know if it was Jason Kelce at all or if it was just Jalen the whole time. So, but I'm sure Jason taught his replacement up just how to do it just right.
Yeah, they brought in Trevor Keegan and then Dylan McMahon to fill in some holes on that offensive line. But, man, it's always strong. Yeah. So, moving on to what we talked about earlier with the coordinators. Kellen Moore comes in, and this is always a fun conversation for everybody because I feel like you and I, Beej, are quite high on Kellen Moore. We see something in Kellen Moore that casuals, we'll call them, don't see. So I think he's been, I mean, sure, maybe he's not as great as you and I think he is from a play caller's perspective, but he's not bad. He's certainly good. I think it's just wild to me that some people can't see that. And the Cowboys thing, they were having a great offensive year. Dak was putting up great numbers when they fired him. They blamed a lot of it's kind of like the issue with Ken Dorsey and the Bills. I mean, the offense had a lot of success right when they fired Ken Dorsey. It's just they were losing games. They needed a scapegoat, and I feel like Kellen Moore was the scapegoat for the Cowboys. He was the scapegoat for the Chargers under Brandon Staley, and I think he's been in some really, really unlucky situations. Yeah. So to put Kellen Moore in this offense with one of the best receiver combos in the game, if not the best, between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I mean,
might be the best.
I think we're going to see almost a scheme switch. I mean, it's going to remain wholly the same under Nick Sirianni, but we're going to see maybe not a scheme switch, but like a tendency switch. They're going to come uber aggressive in the passing game, and I think that they are going to potentially shred some defenses this year in the passing game.
I mean, they're going to be able to run the ball like nobody's business either. So we talked about before, in college when you're a coach, you got to have a good scheme, and in the NFL, you have to scheme it to your best players. And Kellen Moore does that. And so I really believe that he's got some amazing weapons out there, and he's going to take advantage of that. So that makes me super excited for this.
Yeah, same here. So it's really easy to make a bull case for the Eagles. I think that, truth be told, while they did have a bit of a drop off, there was a lot of locker room issues last year, especially, with A.J. Brown kind of not being happy with some of the production that he was getting. And of course, the offensive coordinator situation, they were just very, very poorly called games on the offensive side of the ball. So I think it's very easy. I don't know. Maybe a lot of people disagree with me in thinking that the Eagles are clear, should be and are the clear favorites to win this division. But I think they're going to win 11 or 12 games next year. So it's funny. The model actually has them only winning 9.7 games.
Boo.
But I have them winning over their 10.5 projected here. Just because of, I think, some of those numbers come in from last year, and maybe their efficiency dropped off last year due to the play calling and whatnot. But I think that this, it's the perfect storm for the Eagles heading into next year on the offensive side of the ball. And of course, they've always had a strong defense over the past few years, so I think they're going to maintain that defensive flow. Bear case, I mean, the new coordinators don't click in the first year. We see some more of that locker room drama carried over into this year, and we don't find on-field chemistry and kind of united play from the Eagles. And I can see that's why they go under and below expectations. Is that fair? That's really the only bear case I feel like I can make.
It's fair. It's hard to find a bear case with what's going on. But, A.J. Brown had a little bit of a diva attitude last year, but Kellen Moore is going to get him the ball plenty of times. So I think that he's going to be fine. I've got the over as well. I've got 11 to 12 wins written down right here that you just said. So great minds think alike. But, yeah, I mean, 10.5 is low, in my opinion. This team wins more than 10 games. Yep.
I agree. 100% agree. So before we move on to the Cowboys, guys, if you're watching online on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and then do us a favor. Drop your predictions for the NFC East ahead of 2024. Give us who you think is going to go over or under their expectations. We love scanning the comments for that type of information from you guys. It's always fun, whether it's type 1 or type 2 fun, hearing from you guys. So, all right. Hey, the Cowboys. The Cowboys. They actually won the division last year. Surprisingly, the Eagles came in as the favorites in 2023, and then the Cowboys ended up winning. It was kind of a chaotic finish in the regular season for the NFC East. And then, Brendan, we all remember what happened in the playoffs. They get their ass whipped at home by Jordan Love and the Packers. So,
pretty awesome.
Flat out embarrassed on their home field. So it was quite the ending to a Cowboys season in which I saw a lot of optimism. I thought they I thought they had all the pieces and everything they needed to make a good push for the big game, but nonetheless, they fell short, got embarrassed at home, and I'm very, very skeptical of what they're going to be able to do next year, unless they just use what they went through last year as motivation. So, Cowboys, they lost some key players. Tony Pollard, namely at the running back position. They did lose Jonathan Hankins at defensive tackle, and Tyler Biadasz at center. Dante Fowler Jr. was another big loss. They did bring in Zeke Elliott. They lost Tony Pollard, but they brought in Zeke. I'm actually hearing reports that Zeke has a little more burst than what he looked like to have at the Patriots.
Lost some weight.
Yeah. So he actually looks good. At first, I was like, why would you do that? Why would you bring him
big fatty?
But nonetheless, it seems like it may work out. Who knows? We'll dive into that. And then on the defense side of the ball, they brought in Eric Kendricks at middle linebacker, which I actually think is a good addition for the defense. But let's talk about the Cowboys. They have a 9.5 win total on Caesars, 10.5 win total over at DraftKings. This was the only win total in the NFC East that didn't have a consensus. So everybody else across all the major books had a consensus win total. This one did not. There were some discrepancies. Some at 9.5, some at 10.5. Michael Gallup retired, so he's out of the receiving corps.
Rest in peace.
It's going to be, they did sign CD Lamb to a big contract. We're going to see the Dak and CD duo. Brian Schottenheimer is the second-year offensive coordinator. Mike McCarthy, I think, is going to continue calling plays. We saw him switch to this kind of uber-aggressive passing attack in 2023, and I think they'll try to maintain that in 2024. So, really not much difference from this year to last year. They lost some another key offensive lineman in Tyrone Smith. He did retire as well, so that'll hurt a little bit. But nonetheless, all things really the same, comparatively speaking, to last year. So before I get into any of the numbers and any more details about the Dallas Cowboys 2024 season and projections, Beach, what's your gut feeling about this team and into next year, into this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar going into everything. Pretty much all the coaching is the same, and players are the same. I struggle to think that they're going to be able to run the ball. Now, they might not want to run the ball, which is totally fine with that uber-aggressive passing attack and throwing it to CeeDee Lamb 200 times, and they can get it done that way. But I wonder if they aren't able to run the ball with those offensive line changes and Zeke is older, if they can still compete. Because they have a relatively hard strength of schedule. Am I correct about that? Is it middle of the pack?
Middle of the road, I would say. They start off with Cleveland, New Orleans, and then Baltimore, which two out of those three are not necessarily ideal, but at least you have Baltimore at home. So, but it's not exactly an easy one. And then look, so week 6, Detroit, week 8, 49ers, week 9, Atlanta, week 10, Philadelphia, week 11, Houston. So that's kind of a brutal stretch.
It's hard. It's difficult.
Rankings from a numerical perspective and a model projection perspective, it's about middle of the road, give or take.
I got you. It's just, if everything was perfect and there were no injuries or anything like that, then I think they will perform just like everyone thinks and then flame out in the playoffs like they always do. But to last year had 12 wins, I think they go under that. I mean, I didn't realize that there was another line 9.5. I had them at 10, so I had them under the 10.5. But we'll have to see. They always perform well in the regular season and then do what they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling because last year they were shredding some teams.
They were killing them.
They were shredding, and it was like, wow, this team is actually like they're built for the bowl. They're built for the big game. So
no, they're not.
And then lo and behold, we get in. They get absolutely murked by the Green Bay Packers.
It's pretty fun. It was fun.
That was a fun game. I know if you're a Cowboys fan, I apologize. That was probably insufferable, having to watch your team do that.
It's the same every year. They're used to it by now.
It's
the same every year. Have they won a playoff game in the last 5 years, or are they losing the first round every year? I swear they lose in the first round every year.
It's, some people may watch the show and think we like absolutely hate the Cowboys. We don't, but we're tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over. I really do think highly of the Dallas Cowboys. I actually think Dak Prescott is a phenomenal quarterback. I think he can really stretch the field, and he deserves to get paid. But everything else, like the hiring of Mike McCarthy, still don't agree with. Still, like, no matter how successful one may be in the regular season, I thought that was a dumb coaching hire. I thought the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer was a dumb hire. I mean, he was the one that wasted Russ's prime years over at Seattle.
Could have been Pete Carroll. Could have been Pete Carroll.
It could have been Pete Carroll. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
He's the head coach. Could have been Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll could have been the one whispering in the ears, hey, don't throw the ball more than 20 times a game, even though we have prime Russell Wilson. Whatever. I'll get off my soapbox there. But
Harrison loves Russell Wilson.
I used to love
Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Is he a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, we'll have this debate another time, but I think he has to be, man. So, yeah, but Zeke, Rico heading up the backfield. Of course, they have Deuce Vaughn. They brought in Royce Freeman. CeeDee Lamb signed a big deal. It'll be Brandon Cooks on the opposite side of him with Jalen Tolbert as the third guy. Jake Fergie and Luke Schoonmaker, of course, going to be the tight ends, same as last year. Defense looks relatively the same, headed up by Micah Parsons, D-Law. Eric Hendricks, we mentioned, he's brought in as well. Trayvon Diggs comes back off injury. Ron Bland had quite the year last year. He comes back on the other side of Trayvon Diggs. So this team's going to look the same, albeit that's why part of me wants to say easy under. I do think that they will find some success. The model likes them a lot. They have them almost at 11 wins this year. Really the only game in which they have a under sub 50% chance of winning, if not close to 50% chance of winning, is the 49ers away at 49ers with a 37% chance to win, according to Scarlet. So I'm just naturally down on this team because I just think that unless they shake it up, from a coaching, I don't know. This is just such a wild take, but I don't think they're going to ever be successful in the playoffs unless they get rid of Mike McCarthy and just redo the coaching staff. Just
everyone knows who the real problem is. It's Jerry.
Oh, it's Jerry.
It's Jerry.
Yeah.
Jerry's got to croak in order for them to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I hope you don't, though.
But nonetheless,
everyone does.
Because this team is very, very similar to the team of last year, they can win double-digit games easily.
Mm-hmm. They can.
That's my bull case. They can continue that. They also there's a team chemistry element to this that goes into it as well. They know themselves extremely well. They know this playbook extremely well. They can come in and make a huge splash. The problem is that I think the Eagles are going to be so strong that I think that they can't win this division. Mm-hmm. So I don't like their odds at plus 175. I think they can absolutely win double-digit games. That's my bull case for them. My bull case, actually, my ceiling for this team is winning the division, but that's my ceiling. But I think they finished still a close second, in this division. I think the Eagles are going to come out stronger than ever, actually. But bear case, I see a drop-off, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, the offensive side of the ball, just with, heading into next year without, I feel like CeeDee Lamb can't do it all, and they're bringing in a almost 30-year-old Zeke Elliott and then Brandon Cooks, who's, mid-30s himself. Like, he's still got some juice, but at the end of the day, Dak and CeeDee can't do everything.
If CeeDee gets hurt for like 2 or 3 games, it's over. I'm sorry. I know that's like
if Dak gets
so much to put on one player, but if one of those two get hurt, then their under hits very nicely.
Yeah.
Very easily. And I guess I'm biased. I don't know if I've ever picked an over on the Cowboys. Honestly, I don't know. But, I'm going to say it right now so we can just clip it in January, which is 10 wins.
10. Hey, you're right in the money between consensus odds. So
I'm going with 10.
It's a safe place. So, okay. Hey, a team that is going to look quite different. We talked about the Cowboys who are going to look quite the same. A team that is going to look quite different. The Washington Commanders. Dan Quinn, new head coach coming from the Cowboys. Which, hey, Cowboys lost their defense coordinator. Didn't slip that in. But Dan Quinn, head coach of the Washington Commanders, brings in Cliff Kingsbury and then subsequently drafts Jaden Daniels. This team actually had a slew of offseason losses and additions. So draft results, we already mentioned Jaden Daniels, a couple of, key players as well in there. Luke McCaffrey, namely, being kind of the other hot one to talk about. No pun intended. Off-season additions, they brought in Austin Eckler, Olamide Zaccheaus, Zach Ertz, and then Marcus Mariota to back up. And then they brought in Bobby Wagner on the defensive side of the ball to kind of be a defensive leader. And of course, big. He's still got some juice left in the tank, crazy enough.
Mm-hmm.
They also brought in Dante Fowler from the Cowboys. I think that's a pretty big addition. James Pierre at the cornerback position. If we go to the losses, they did lose Sam Howell, RIP. We really thought he was going to be in last year.
That's my fault.
Yeah.
My fault.
Well, I mean,
he led the league in passing for like 5 weeks. Just saying. Just saying. I was right.
We had this weird conglomeration of we had the right take, but it was the wrong outcome. He did have a great great air raid, but he just sucked at it. Yeah. Curtis Samuel, they lost him to the Bills. They lost Antonio Gibson, lost Logan Thomas. They lost Jacoby Brissett. So this offense is going to look quite different, namely the quarterback position, the running back position. They still have Scary Terry and Jahan Dotson, but it's going to be a fun offense nonetheless. Now, from a success standpoint, and the wins and losses column is a whole different story. They're sitting at 6.5 consensus wins over or under. Their odds to win the division, the best ones I found, were 10-1 with Caesars. Before I get into some of the numbers, projections, and whatnot, and we can kind of discuss the new additions in the coaching department as well, but brief synopsis of what you think is going, your gut feeling for this Commanders team heading into 2024, and then we can get into their bull and bear cases.
I just think it's really exciting because this is Kyler Murray 2.0. It's Cliff, and he drafted a quarterback that he wants to run that offense in Jaden Daniels. And I know that Harrison was really, really high on Jaden Daniels, I think before most of the people were before the draft. And, he can get it done. I think he had 2,000 rushing yards combined his past 2 years in college. And he can sling the rock too. And I mean, I think did Kyler have DeAndre his rookie year, or did he not? I'm trying to make a comparison to who Jaden would have with Scary Terry, who has not had a good quarterback ever. And so I love that. I really love that for him. And I don't know. I think the running game is going to be a little difficult. They lost, you didn't mention it, but they lost Antonio Gibson, who's just a young, still explosive back, but they bring in Austin Eckler, who I'm faster than him now. I think he's so slow after what he was dealing through with injuries, and I just think that with Cliff Kingsbury there and with Jaden Daniels, that I don't know what I'm going to see, but I'm going to see some fireworks in one way or the other.
Yeah, my general. Now I have to own up to this, and I still kind of believe this is true, but I was always on the side of where Cliff Kingsbury was not as sharp as everybody thought he was from an offensive X's and O's and schematic standpoint. I never really bought into the hype that he was like the offensive guru that everybody kind of made him out to be. Now, maybe some of that is attributed to I just thought he was a poor head coach in general because he couldn't, make those decisions in game to put his team in a winning position. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I always kind of thought he was a fake sharp. I guess we'll really find out. But now it's at least better that he's in the offensive coordinator role instead of the head coach. So it alleviates a lot of stress for him in game. He can solely focus on running the offense the way that the offense needs to be run. Dan Quinn, I'm a Falcons fan. So I had a run-in with Dan Quinn, and he actually took the Falcons to the Super Bowl, even though they blew that
28-3.
fat lead to the Patriots. That
28
was
to
more
3.
Kyle Shanahan's fault. We can have another discussion about that
Don't blame Kyle
another
on
day.
that.
But I'm blaming Kyle Shanahan for that one. But I actually do think that this was a good hire for the Commanders. I think that they're trying to change the culture completely. They've seen Dan Quinn kind of do that with a struggling Falcons team in the past. And I think it was actually smart from a roster standpoint because the Commanders' defense is actually pretty strong. And you think about it, two of the best, like one of the best tandems on the defensive line between Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. And then, of course, they have Emmanuel Forbes in his sophomore year. And I think that there's a lot to build on the defensive side of the ball. And with Dan Quinn being able to do what he potentially did at the Cowboys and revamp that defense. And then if Cliff Kingsbury actually can, transform this offense, it'll be an exciting team nonetheless. It may not be, the one of the better teams in the NFC East, but it'll be fun nonetheless. They'll look a lot better losing if they lose than they have in the past, where, in the past they've just looked like a bunch of idiots, on the field. It's like been kind of tragic to watch them waste the talent that they've had.
If one thing on that, if you're going to lose, would you rather lose 13-10 or 45-42?
100%.
That's what I want. All I want is some points there. I mean, if you're going to go down, you better go down swinging.
Yeah. So Scarlett actually has right at 6 wins for the Commanders. I think they go over. I think they go over barely. It's 7.
I like 7.
I think they get it at 7, and I think that kind of comes in the latter half of the year when they play teams like Pittsburgh in Week 10, Tennessee in Week 13, New Orleans in Week 15. They do finish the year going Philadelphia, Atlanta, and then Dallas. So that's a bit tough, but I think they can sneak in 7, man. I really do think they could do that. I'm bullish on this Commanders team. Now, my bear case is that they're just in shambles.
It just doesn't work.
My priors are confirmed in the fact that Cliff Kingsbury is a fake sharp. Jane Daniels, you're right. I was higher than most people were. I was higher than market for Jane Daniels in the 2024 draft. I love this guy. From a statistical standpoint, he was phenomenal. I don't think people realize that. Of course, he has his rushing ability, but solely from a passing perspective, he had the largest ADOT out of any of those top 6 quarterbacks in the draft, and he was second overall in EPA per play or EPA per pass. So, dude's got it. He can certainly ball. And so I think that this is kind of hinges on Cliff Kingsbury, because if he can dial up the right plays, they will sneak a few wins in against teams that they should not. So that's what I
feel like. I feel like that is. I feel like this is the team for that this year.
I do too. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people, especially with the culture change. A lot of good things going for this team. My bear case, they're playing in one of the tougher divisions. They got to play Dallas twice a year. They got to play the Eagles twice a year, and they got to play the Giants twice a year. The Giants, it's looking, market has them having a down year, but still nonetheless, Brian Daboll's Giants always are going to show up to play, whether they're good or not. And then, of course, Jane Daniels isn't pro ready. Cliff Kingsbury isn't ready. That's kind of the bear case for the Commanders, I feel like, is that they can't put it together, at least not in the first year.
Correct me if I'm sorry, if you finish that statement.
I would say they're kind of young at this point.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Cliff Kingsbury's style of offense isn't like a pro style. It's more like a college kind of style. So I don't think that the transition from college to the pro is really going to hinder Jaden Daniels very much. It's a very quarterback-friendly style of play. And as long as, he can make the throws, I really feel like the transition should be pretty easy. I don't know if you agree with that point or not, but, there's always bear case, right? But
always. We got to give the bear
who
case.
likes to be bear? No one likes to be bear.
I know. But, sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes it's reality. So, well, speaking of Bears, let's talk about Brian Daboll and the New York Giants. This team, if I'm being honest with you guys, I know as somebody who hosts a, football show, I should have a better stance or perspective, but I have yet to make up my mind about this team in 2024. If I'm just being completely transparent with you guys, just solely of the fact because they're bringing back Daniel Jones, that's going to be the starting quarterback. Really, this team is going to be inherently the same as they were last year from a schematic standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. Mike Kafka, it's his third year as the offensive coordinator here. I have expectations for the Giants, whether they're good or not. I don't know, but I have expectations in terms of performance, and they're not good solely because of Daniel Jones. Now, it's funny because I do think Daniel Jones is an underrated fantasy football quarterback, but
real life,
I don't think he's an underrated real life quarterback.
This is real life.
I haven't seen the more cerebral component that's required to be a successful NFL quarterback out of Daniel Jones yet. And I'm waiting on that. Maybe Malik Neighbors is the spark that he needs from a playmaker perspective, but it's hard to do that because he's really returning a lot of the same playmakers in the passing game, and he's losing Saquon. Devin Singletary is going to take over this backfield, and it's hard for me to be bullish about this offense. I can be bullish about the team in general just because I'm a huge Brian Daboll believer. So I do think the Giants will get up for their coach and Brian Daboll. I do think they will show up prepared from a schematic standpoint, and they will give teams a run for their money. But what's really the ceiling for this team, Beach? What is your ceiling and what is your floor for this team heading into 2024?
I just want to start off by saying that the front office ruined this team when they signed Daniel Jones to their contract. 100%. I know that everybody was doing it, but come on.
It was a bit too early.
Come on. And when they did that, they don't have any more money to spend on anybody else.
Nope.
And they let Saquon go. Now, I don't know how their offensive line compares across the league, but I would assume it's not very good. And they bring in Devin Singletary to put that weight on his shoulders. And then you've got no weapons on the outside. Besides from Malik Neighbors, who is unproven in the league, yes, we don't even know. He was a really high draft pick, and he should be good. But when he's the only one out there, how do you expect anything to really happen? They lost Sterling Shepard, too, who's like kind of one of their guys for a while. They got Wandale. Who else do they even have? I don't even know. I really don't.
They got Jalen Hyatt, who I expect actually big things out of. Go Vols. Darius Slayton. They did sign Allen Robinson, and then, like you said, they have Wandale. And then Isaiah McKenzie, if you're one to count.
They're all fast. That's good. They're all quick. Just run drags.
Bunch of gadget guys, right?
Just run
Gadget
drags.
guys.
I get their win total 6.5, right?
Yep.
I really think that because of that, their ceiling is 7. They don't hit their ceiling. This team, I don't know. Anybody could look at this roster and this team and just think that anything good is going to come out of it.
Yeah. So here's my bull case for the Giants.
The Bears.
Bull case. As we saw Brian Daboll with Josh Allen, 3 years, year 3. That was a transformation year for Josh Allen under Brian Daboll. Bull case, we see maybe not the same transition or transformation, but a transformation upward in Daniel Jones under Brian Daboll. And all of a sudden, this offense is clicking and it's finding a lot of success. Now the defense still has a lot of holes. They did add Brian Burns on the defensive side of the ball to complement Kayvon Thibodeau, but there's still a lot of holes. They brought in Isaiah Simmons as well, but still a lot of holes in the secondary. Their 2 starting cornerbacks are Deonte Banks and Cordell Flott. So tell me if you've heard of those guys before.
Cordell Flott.
Yeah. So maybe strong front 7, but still weak in the back. I think that my bull case for them is that their offense exceeds expectations and they actually make a splash, but it's a harder schedule, and I just don't see them. My ceiling for them, I agree, is 9 wins. If Daniel Jones finds the transformation that, it's hard to say. I don't want to say that Josh Allen has, because he's truly an elite quarterback now, but you guys get what I'm saying. There was a transformation in year 3 of Josh Allen under Brian Daboll. So maybe something like that clicks for Daniel Jones. But again, my ceiling is if that happens with Daniel Jones' skill set and talent, it's a ceiling of 9 wins. But my bear case, and more of the case that I kind of lean to, it's a tough schedule. Really, the only offseason addition for the offense was Malik Neighbors, who I actually do think is going to be a great addition to this offense. But they lost Darren Waller. A bunch of those receivers are returning. They didn't really make a huge splash last year. Maybe we see Jalen Hyatt take the next step. They lost Saquon Barkley. I can't see a world in which they like truly take the next step from last year.
I wanna rebuttal your take about the third year, like the Josh Allen comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I think the only way that that's possible is if Daniel Jones is truly a threat on the ground. Because, Josh Allen is a huge threat on the ground. He weighs like 260 pounds. He's 7 feet tall. He's awesome. And he can throw the ball a country mile. And I just don't see it happening the way that it happened with Josh Allen because he's not Josh Allen. But in order for it to happen, I think if he's a legitimate threat on the ground that will require defenses to back off a little bit, then that's how he'll get there. Which he has shown a little bit beforehand.
Yeah. He's fast.
He's fast. He trips on air and doesn't score a touchdown.
He's kind of retarded, yes.
But I mean, I like it. I like the tape. But okay. I don't think that it will get there, but I do like it.
Certainly not to the same degree. Certainly not to the same degree. I don't want people to extrapolate my take and be like, "Oh, he said Daniel Jones is going to be the next Josh Allen." No, I'm not saying that. Please do not go telling people that. But that's my bull case, and my bear case is what more I lean to. The model actually has them at 4 wins, sadly. So 2 below their projected win total in Vegas. That doesn't account for like Brian Daboll and his leadership and his coaching knowledge. So, I am a big believer in Daboll, but I can see him running the heck out of Daniel Jones. My bold take for this Giants team is that we see Drew Lock as the starter by the end of the season. So
that's more likely, I would say.
Yep. So, I mean, hey, NFC East total outcome. Who do you have winning the division and the highest seed heading into the 2024 playoffs? And maybe a hot take sprinkled in there.
I mean, I think the order that we talked about the teams is the order they finish in. But I do like to say that the Commanders get second. I do like to say that.
That's a hot take.
Do I think that is going to happen? Maybe. It would have to click really well.
Yeah.
It would have to click really well for the football team to do that. But I think Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. I'm going to say the Cowboys don't make the playoffs this year.
Wow. Okay. I like it. I actually
if I have them at 10, I'm going to say the Cowboys miss the playoffs this year.
Okay.
Could be Matt McCarthy's last year at that.
Yeah. So I have Eagles taking it all in the division in the NFC East. I actually have them as a 1 seed in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
I like that.
And then my bold take, Commanders related. I think they steal one against the Cowboys.
Well, were they not 0-6 last year? I think they were 0-6 in division games. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but they were 0-6, which is hard to do.
Yep, 0-6 in the NFC East.
Yep.
So, I think they steal one against the Cowboys, and I think they go 50, right below 500. They lose 2, steal one against the Cowboys, and then they beat the Giants twice.
I like that. So, I like that. 3-3.
Yep. All right. Hey, well, that wraps it up for our NFC East show. Beej, appreciate you being here, guys. We will be back next week with another divisional breakdown as we get into preseason football. So, guys, we appreciate you guys, and we will be back here later.